Joining us now to discuss the state of this war and the future is Ron Dermer, Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs. Minister, welcome back to the programme, sir. I think we're all very, very focused on where we are in truce talks, and we'd like to start the conversation there, if we can. This came out from the Times of Israel, just reporting just moments ago that the Prime Minister Netanyahu sent the Mossad chief to Doha to inform the Qatari PM that Israel is still prepared to fully withdraw from the corridor between Egypt and Gaza in a deal's second phase. Can you confirm this morning for us, Minister, whether that reporting is accurate or not?
No, I think just to explain to your viewers what we're talking about, because there's been so much misreporting and half-reporting. Understand that Israel currently occupies this corridor, which is between Egypt and Gaza. And that corridor, when it was left open and when Israeli forces were not there, was used as a supply route for all of the arms coming into Gaza. That's how they got armed. Their other borders actually are with Israel. And so the arms did not come from Israel. They came through that border. And Israel took over the Philadelphia corridor in the last 2 or 3 months, and also the Rafah crossing. And that has blocked all the arms and weapons from going into Hamas. The deal that is proposed on the table, phase one of that deal, Israel has made clear, and the Prime Minister made clear in a televised press conference a couple days ago, and I'm sure he'll speak to the foreign press soon as well, that Israel is not going to withdraw from that line. We won't withdraw off that corridor, because if we do that, then you're going to see those weapons come back. Phase one of this deal, what it calls for, Jonathan, is to have negotiations over the conditions over a permanent ceasefire. And once you've concluded those negotiations, while you're in a ceasefire for phase one, in order to get to phase two and a permanent ceasefire, that's when you can discuss long-term security arrangements on the Philadelphia corridor. So I think that report is a little bit misleading, thinking that in a few weeks Israel is going to leave. But it is true that Israel is committed to actually negotiating this deal. We've been committed from the beginning. When the president put forward a proposal based on a May 27th document, he put forward a proposal in a speech at the end of May. Israel said yes, Hamas said no. Then the U.S. put forward a final bridging proposal, which they called it a final bridging proposal, in the middle of August. We said yes, Hamas said no. Hamas has not been interested in moving ahead to close the deal. They were interested, frankly, Jonathan, for the last several weeks, in an escalation in the region. They wanted Hezbollah to attack Israel. They wanted Iran to attack Israel. And I think now they're hoping that somehow Israel's government will make compromise that it wasn't prepared to make it before. And I can assure you, Jonathan, in the wake of the horrific execution of 6 hostages, including an American, Hersh Goldberg, Poland, Israel is not going to make concessions in the wake of that. We are committed to a deal. We set people to sit with negotiators to try to get that deal done, and I hope we can do it. We're working with the U.S. administration to try to push that deal forward.
Minister, as you know, we're very focused on accuracy here at Bloomberg, so you said that report was slightly misleading. Can we just reconfirm the aspect of it that was misleading? And could you confirm whether in a second phase, Netanyahu has ultimately sent the Mossad chief to Doha to inform the Qatari PM that in a second phase you are willing to fully withdraw from that corridor?
We don't. I cannot talk about the arrangements in a second phase because we haven't even negotiated about it. Who is going to be there? How long is it going to take? I'll make it very simple for you, Jonathan. Until we have an actual practical solution on the ground for the Philadelphia corridor, Israel forces cannot leave. And for the last 20 years, we haven't had that. We had Egyptian presidents, and they announced that their policy was to stop the smuggling that would go into Gaza. We had that in Mubarak. We have that in Sisi today. What happened on the ground was a different matter. When Morsi was the president, you remember from the Muslim Brotherhood, was the president of Egypt, a highway of weapons came into Gaza. So the question is not necessarily Egyptian policy at the top levels. It's what's happening on the ground. What are you going to do on the ground to prevent that border from being a porous supply route for weapons to Hamas? Because we have
Minister, it raises an obvious question, if I may jump in, sir, and just interject, because I'd love some clarity from you on this. Minister, I just want to squeeze this in and then you can complete your thoughts, sir. Just quickly, if you can trust Egypt to mediate the talks, why can't you trust them to secure the border? Isn't that a contradiction that we need to try and reconcile?
No, I don't think so. By the way, Qatar is also a mediator of the talks, and Qatar has been harboring and financing Hamas for a long time, and frankly, financing the Muslim Brotherhood all over the world, and also promoting a lot of Hamas propaganda, which is anti-Semitic, anti-American, through their state-controlled television station, Al Jazeera. So I don't think those two are necessarily go hand in hand. The fact is, for the last 20 years, since Israel left in the disengagement, a move that was applauded by the whole world, we left that corridor called the Philadelphia corridor. We left the border between Egypt and Gaza. We have not had a solution on the ground. I'm not questioning the intentions of the Egyptians. I'm questioning the results. And all of Israel saw it. October 7th could not have happened without that border being open. And so Israel now has closed that. And until we have an actual practical solution on the ground that is working after 20 years of failure, Israel can't leave that line.
Minister, I need to follow up on one other aspect of this, and that's the division that might be emerging in the Israeli government. There was another report, and by all means, if this didn't happen, you can tell me it didn't happen, that your defense minister told the Security Cabinet the following, quote, "The fact that we prioritize this corridor at the cost of the lives of the hostages is a moral disgrace." So how do you respond to that voice coming from within your own government?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into private conversations. The Security Cabinet, I will just tell you that the Security Cabinet, of which I am a member, there are 10 of us in that cabinet. 8 of us voted to support the Prime Minister's position. 1 of us voted to abstain, and 1 voted to oppose. And he made a very clear position that Israel was not going to leave that corridor. And that is a position, by the way, Jonathan, that is, in my view, supported by the overwhelming majority of the Israeli people. I believe it is wrong to say it's either staying in the corridor or saving the hostages. It's not true. There are many other aspects to this deal that haven't been resolved. The United States is working diligently to try to resolve it with the other mediators and with us. Hopefully we can get there. But it is clear that in phase 1, Israel will stay on that line until we have a practical solution on the ground that we can convince the people of Israel will know that what happened on October 7th will not happen again, that Hamas will not be rearmed. They will not have an opportunity to do again and again October 7th, which is what they're saying. That's what they're saying today, Jonathan. That's what they intend to do. We've cut off the supply lines of weapons. We're not going to open that supply line without having a solution on the ground that works.
Minister, can we go back to this phase 1 agreement? A few weeks ago, Secretary Blinken was in Israel, and he said there was a very constructive meeting he had with Netanyahu and confirmed that Israel supports that bridging proposal. Then just this week, President Biden said Netanyahu was not doing enough. How do you manage what's coming out of the United States? What exactly does the U.S. want to see from Israel, and why is Israel not complying?
Well, I think that just the facts are, Anne-Marie, as I said, there was a proposal put forward in May. Israel said yes. Hamas wasn't interested in talks. They added so many changes, around 24 changes to that proposal. Then there was another bridging proposal in August, which was the one that Secretary of State Blinken was referring to. I was in his meeting with the Prime Minister, and it was a very constructive meeting. And Hamas said no to that. And the reason why Hamas said no at that time to any offer on the table is they wanted Hezbollah and Iran to attack us and to create a regional war. That's what they wanted to do on October 7th, and they wanted to do it in the last several weeks. My hope would be, hopefully, that the potential of a regional escalation is in our rearview mirror, and we can get down and see if we can finish these talks. What the last thing that Israel is going to do is, in the wake of the execution of 6 hostages, is to make concessions that it would not have made before. That is not going to happen. In fact, all the Israeli Security Cabinet was united that Hamas is going to pay a heavy price for that decision. Because if we don't do that, not only is it going to be dangerous for get to a hostage deal, they're going to start killing hostages, thinking that if you kill hostages, you get concessions. We're trying to get as much as we can on the same page of the Americans. I think we've been there for the last couple months. Hopefully we'll continue. And I think when the U.S. and Israel show no daylight between them, and when all the pressure is directed where it should be, on Hamas, I think the chances of getting to a deal go way, way up. And I hope we can get there in the next couple of weeks.
Is it your understanding that right now what the U.S. is putting on the table in these discussions, in these conversations, is, quote, take it or leave it?
Well, I don't know. The bridging proposal that was put forward on August 16th was a final bridging proposal. So I don't know if this will be a final bridging proposal, and then we'll get a final bridging proposal. It might be that they're talking about specifics and details, because this is a kind of framework agreement, and there's still a lot of things to be negotiated. Again, the problem in the negotiation is not just the Philadelphia Corridor. There are several things, maybe a half dozen things that have to be closed in order to get to a deal. Right now, we have not seen, and I want to repeat this again, at no point has Hamas agreed to any deal that's on the table. They have rejected everything. We had one movement of Hamas, which was in early July, where they understood that there's not going to be an end of the war as an entry ticket into a deal. There will be a temporary ceasefire of 6 weeks. And then during that temporary ceasefire, we're going to have to negotiate what would be the conditions of a permanent ceasefire. The Philadelphi Corridor and how you block weapons from going into Gaza is an important part of that. We're willing to negotiate all of that, and we're willing to get into that first stage of the deal. Hamas made that change. I don't know if they still actually agree to that. But on the other issues, there are still pretty significant gaps that have to be closed, and the U.S. is trying to do that. I will tell you that the Justice Department's decision yesterday was a very good decision to put pressure on Hamas. Hopefully, the other people internationally and regionally will put as much pressure on Hamas as possible, because Israel's government wants to get to a deal. Believe me, Israel's government wants to get to a deal. What we're not willing to do is go to a deal that's going to endanger the security of 10 million Israelis. But we're willing to do a deal. And we hope we can get there as soon as possible.
Minister, you're saying you want to get to a deal. But just this morning, your National Security Minister, Ben-Gvir, came out on Twitter and said, quote, "I'm acting to halt negotiations with Hamas." So is that not accurate?
That's not the position of the government of Israel or the Prime Minister of Israel. As I've told you, we have different views of different government ministers, and the Prime Minister encourages people to say exactly what they think in all these meetings, but then you come to a vote. And the Prime Minister's position, which is we're willing to get to a deal, we want to get to a deal, we have red lines that we have to keep, but we want to get to that deal to bring those hostages back. Up until this point, we remember on October 7th, there were 250 hostages that were taken. We have succeeded in bringing 150 hostages back. 110 of them or so have been alive. And I tell you, the murder, the execution of these 6 hostages was gut-wrenching for all the people of Israel, no matter where they are on the political spectrum. You probably may have had them on the show, the Rachel and John Goldberg, Poland, what they have done in raising awareness about the plight of the hostages and their dignified struggle and heroic struggle really for their release. It was a major, major blow. And a lot of Israelis are angry, and I can understand that. I think that the anger has to be directed against Hamas in order for us to get to a deal. And yes, there will be people who will vote against the deal. I believe some of my colleagues in the government will vote against the deal. But the overwhelming majority of the country and also of the government backs the Prime Minister's position and wants to get to a deal.
Minister, you've been very generous with your time. Before we let you go, just a quick question. Will the Prime Minister be attending the UN General Assembly later this month in New York?
I believe he will, but, you know, with what happens in our region in the Middle East, you never know. I think he intends to go there, and hopefully we can make that happen. And he'll have a chance, just as he addressed the American people in the Congress a couple of months ago, will have a chance to address the world about how we move forward in this region and how we can move from this catastrophe that happened on October 7th to move towards a different future for Israelis, for Palestinians, and for everyone in the region.
Please let the Prime Minister know. We would love the opportunity to sit down with him later on this month, sir. Minister, thank you very much for your time. Ron Dermer there, the Israel Minister of Strategic Affairs.